Welcome to Hot Topic TV, where we dive deep into stories that challenge the way we see the world and ourselves. If you enjoy thought-provoking narratives, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our most controversial stories. Now, sit back and let's dive into today's episode. He stepped off the private jet, the polished leather of his designer shoes gleaming in the bright sun. He inhaled the salty air deeply, feeling the breeze carry away the stress that had accumulated in his body from months of endless work. This trip was long overdue, and he was determined to make the most of every second. The resort was a vision of paradise. Palm trees swayed gently, and the sound of ocean waves softly caressed the air. Luxury permeated every corner, from the sparkling infinity pools to the marble-lined paths that led to secluded villas. The air itself seemed laced with indulgence. He was here to enjoy the high life, something he believed was his due. As the owner of multiple successful companies, his life had always been about wealth and power. He had worked hard to build his empire, and he enjoyed the perks that came with it. The finest things money could buy, the deference of others, and of course, the feeling of superiority that often accompanied his status. As he entered the resort lobby, the staff greeted him with wide smiles and formal bows. A valet rushed to collect his bags while another offered him a glass of champagne. He barely acknowledged them, his mind already elsewhere, fixated on the serenity and decadence that awaited him. It wasn't long before he settled into his usual routine of poolside lounging, cocktail in hand, basking in the warmth of the tropical sun. The other guests around him seemed equally at ease, each wrapped in their own cocoon of luxury. He sipped his drink, scanning the faces of those nearby. Some tourists, others clearly like him. Business people, CEOs, people who had made it in life. They, like him, had earned this paradise. That was when he noticed her. She was a woman, perhaps in her late 30s, moving gracefully around the tables near the pool. Her dark skin glistened under the sunlight as she wiped down the tables, her movements deliberate and measured. She wore a simple white dress, nothing remarkable at least to him, but there was something about the way she carried herself that caught his eye. She wasn't rushing, but neither did she seem to be relaxing like the other guests. She was focused, intent on her task, yet completely calm. He frowned. She wasn't wearing the typical staff uniform, but he immediately assumed she was an employee. Perhaps someone from the cleaning crew. Her presence didn't bother him at first, until she came near his table. A few droplets of water from his sweating glass had spilled onto the table beside him, and naturally he expected it to be cleaned up immediately. "Hey, excuse me," he called out to her. His voice was loud, confident. He expected her to respond instantly. She didn't. Instead, she continued wiping the table she had been working on, completely ignoring his request. His frown deepened, irritation sparking in his chest. "Excuse me," he said again, this time sharper. "I need this table cleaned." She paused, finally glancing in his direction. But her face remained unreadable. For a moment, their eyes locked. He sensed something in her gaze. Was it defiance? She calmly turned back to her task, finishing up before walking away. He was furious. How dare she ignore me, he thought. He was used to people rushing to meet his demands. In his world, his wealth commanded respect and attention. His blood boiled as he watched her disappear into the resort. The rest of his afternoon was clouded with anger, the sheer disrespect of it. When he returned to his villa later, he was still stewing, determined to report her to management. After all, this was his vacation, and he had paid handsomely for the best service. He grabbed the resort's directory and dialed the front desk. "Hello, yes, I'd like to speak with a manager," he said into the phone, his voice crisp with annoyance. "There's a woman here. I believe she works for the resort, but her attitude is completely unacceptable. She ignored me when I asked her to clean my table, and I want this addressed immediately." The front desk attendant paused before replying. "Sir, can you describe the woman?" "Dark-skinned, wearing a white dress. She was wiping down tables by the pool earlier." "You should know who she is." The attendant hesitated again before responding. "I believe there may be a misunderstanding, sir. The woman you're describing, she's not an employee. She's a guest. In fact, she's the owner of the resort." The words hit him like a slap. He froze, the phone still pressed against his ear as the attendant continued to speak, though he barely registered the rest of the conversation. The owner of this place. Impossible. He had assumed, he had known, that she was staff. someone working for him. But the truth was far more shocking. He hung up the phone, his mind racing. The woman he had dismissed so easily, the one he had treated with such disrespect, was not only a guest, she was the owner of the very resort he had come to enjoy. And not just this one, as he would soon learn. She owned several luxury resorts across the globe, and her empire dwarfed his own. The realization left him stunned. The next morning, he made his way down to breakfast, still reeling from the revelation. As he entered the dining area, he saw her again. This time, she was seated at a grand table, surrounded by other high-profile guests, speaking with authority and grace. Her presence commanded the room. She was clearly a woman of immense power and influence. He watched her from afar, feeling a weight of guilt settle over him. He had judged her based on her appearance, based on the simple act of her wiping down a table. And in doing so, he had revealed his own deep-seated prejudices he hadn't even realized he carried. For the remainder of his stay, he avoided any direct interaction with her, though he couldn't shake the lesson he had learned. His wealth, his status, it had blinded him. He had been so sure of himself, so certain of his place in the world, that he had failed to see the truth standing right in front of him. As the plane took off, carrying him away from the island paradise, he glanced out the window one last time. The resort shrank beneath him, but the lesson he had learned loomed large. He had judged her by her appearance, by his own skewed perceptions of wealth and status. But the truth? It was more powerful than he could have imagined. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe to Hot Topic TV for more thought-provoking narratives that challenge your perspectives. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future stories.